In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, taking a look at very cold temperatures, especially in the medium to long range. We do expect that second half of January to be very cold. We do also expect some potential snowstorms, even in some areas that have had a bit of a snow hole. So perhaps other areas of New England that have been kind of struggling, also the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast. I do think that the Southeast and Mid-Atlantic is not done. We're entering into a very cold pattern that is combined with above average precipitation, so that is going to lead towards the chance of more southern snowfall. So I do see that being a possibility throughout the rest of January. So let's go ahead and discuss things. We're talking about the 6 to 10 day outlook from the National Weather Service, and we can see that there's going to be plenty of cold to go around. I think that during this 16th through 10th of January, or 16th through 20th of January timeframe, better yet, we will have some warm days here in the east, and that is why we're not that far below average. I do think that there's going to be a couple of days within there where we are colder, so it's going to be a little bit of an up and down pattern for a little bit here, but again, the medium to long range does appear to be very cold after this point. So that is the current expectation. This will open up the possibility for the West to finally see some cold returning. As you know, if you've watched the channel, we've seen a lot of positive PNAs this winter so far. So seeing that cool down is going to be something that we haven't seen for a little while. Also a little warmer here across southern Texas, and that's about the only area that we expect warmer temperatures overall for the 16th through 20th time frame. When we look at the precipitation, though, like I mentioned, we're going to start to see a surge of activity here in the east right here. And this is going to cover the short to medium range, again, 16th through 20th. So a lot of storms tracking through this area. I also think that we're going to see a couple moving down like this, which will be the primary threat for snowfall in these areas. Although we're going to be cold in the west, it does still appear to be quite dry unless you move over to the Rockies and Plains, where we will see some more above average activity. The 8 to 14 day temperature outlook, this will be the 18th through the 24th. We do expect that potential polar vortex event, so really cold at the very least, multiple Arctic blasts moving through, similarly to what we've seen in early January. But we do expect cold overall to also be around for the west at times and the east coast at times, but I think the north central is really where they're expecting the peak of this. When this happens, we're going to continue to see above average activity here in the east, so you can see why I'm a little bit optimistic on snowfall for especially the south and mid-Atlantic, but also the northeast, seeing some snowfall in these types of patterns. So I think between when did we start this? I guess the 6 to 10 day outlook goes from, let's see, the 16th all the way through the 24th here. That seems to be a time frame where we will at least cash in once or twice, unless, you know, it's a total bust and we don't see the match up. But odds are that we will see something come together at some point during this time frame. Still quite dry out west, though, and still above average for the Rockies, where they should start to really see some serious snow with this type of a pattern. The 3 to 4 week outlook is officially out, and they are showing cold moving down from the north central states into the Ohio Valley. It seems like they're not the most confident. This is between the 25th and 7th here, 25th of January, 7th of February, of course. It seems like they're leaning towards colder in this area and warmer in the west, but they're not the highest confident in it like they were early here in January. So a little bit of a toss-up, leaning cold, but could go the other way. Is kind of what I'm seeing here from the National Weather Service. But this is a good sign, the warmth out west for cold in the east. Now, as we take a look at the precipitation, again, continued optimism because of what we're dealing with here. Potential cold, leaning towards cold, and also above average precipitation for the southeast, up into the mid-Atlantic, and bits of the northeast. So maybe some more snowstorms in this area during this time frame. Not a guarantee, of course, but possibly. The overall monthly outlook looks like cold moving from the north central straight into the southeast here. Similarly to what we've seen, this did come out like a week ago, something like that. So definitely a little outdated, but it seems to already be going this way, and it looks to continue going this way for a while. So I think this outlook is going to verify a little bit above average there in the northeast, though. The precipitation, I think this is going to be a bust. I think I've mentioned this before, but the northeast being above average does not appear to happen. Also, we've had below average precipitation here in the southwest, so this is one of the bright spots, but I think for this south central area, this is likely going to basically fail as well. And then I also think the northern Rockies here could have above average precipitation. So again, these are some highlight areas where they've kind of gotten it right. But I think that the Northwest is going to end up being below average by far on the month. So just to reiterate, I would say this is like 50% correct. We're seeing some failures. Maybe this is 75% incorrect, because we have 2 areas where they got it right, and then 3 major areas where I'd say this is going to end up being wrong. Of course, the equal chance area can't really mess that up. So they kind of indicated it could go either way. And I think that we'll have some above average activity in here overall once it's done. And then perhaps a toss-up here in the north central states in the Great Lakes as well. When we look at the past 10 days, it does appear very, very cold throughout these, again, territories where they've been calling for the month to pop up with below average temperatures. A little bit above average there for Maine, but hardly. And then the west has been quite warm. Now, as we take a look at the model guidance real quickly, I want you to pay close attention. This model really has a lot of storms moving from the Gulf right near the coast. They're just a little bit too far offshore. When we look at the GFS model, it's actually going to be a little further northwest and bring quite a few of these onshore for the Mid-Atlantic and Southeast. Take it with a grain of salt. It's hard to say. I think the European model is showing everything kind of offshore. The GFS model is showing everything for the Southeast. I think that the GFS model could be even too far southeast with the snowfall, as it tends to do sometimes. It's been further northwest lately, but the European model is just offshore with the storms. I'm not sure if the European model, if it trended west, if it would be snowfall for these very far southeast areas or not. We'll have to look at the temperatures together, but let's just move forward. I want to take us towards the day today, Saturday the 11th. So what we see is our storm is offshore. A bit of a bust for me, by the way, guys. We were expecting 2 to 4 inches according to the National Weather Service. We got about 1, and at the time of recording, 1 p.m. on Saturday, January 11th, it's almost completely melted. So I think that a lot of areas in northern North Carolina and southeastern Virginia dealt with this, even up into the peninsula in here. We dealt with sleet mixing in very early. The snowfall was insanely heavy. We were outside for that last night for the vlog. I know I keep just hinting at the vlog, but it's coming. And it was some of the heaviest snow I've ever seen. We got about an inch in, I think, an hour, probably. It was struggling to stick at first, but I would say we were pretty close to 2-inch per hour rates there for a minute. And then we saw a quick 1.5 inches of snowfall, and then we switched to sleet. That kind of suppressed the snowfall down a little bit, down to about an inch, like I said. And then we actually saw rain start to melt in, or mix in around maybe even 2-3 a.m., which was way ahead of schedule. So a big bust for us. We did see snow on the ground, which is the first time in probably 3 years here, but definitely a little disappointing. I was happy to see it. That was beautiful. We do see snowfall occurring along the Rockies here as we speak, also over the north central states, and then some of the northeast still dealing with some snow showers from our system. I know some areas got a fluffy maybe 1 inch of snowfall in some of these pockets, so some of you guys saw some snowfall. As we move towards Sunday the 12th, we see that we get a bit of a thaw. We're dealing with this trough in the west, little bit of a ridge here across the east, so we see this bit of warmth trying to push in, and this is likely coming directly as a result of this diving cold across the west. We do see a low over the Midwest here, some snowfall happening for the Great Lakes and upper Midwest. As we move this forward towards Monday, we can see that some of those snow showers could extend into the Mid-Atlantic, the western Mid-Atlantic, that is. Western Mid-Atlantic / Eastern Ohio Valley, West Virginia, Western Pennsylvania area, and then also areas of Western New York seeing some snowfall from that. The cold is starting to move eastward again by the 13th. We do see warmth along the immediate west coast, some colder temperatures over the Rockies here, some snowfall showers happening. As we take this forward towards Tuesday the 14th, we see that we are starting to build back a full-blown ridge over the western states, with the trough kind of just moving through the north central into the east here. So we're moving back into a little bit of a colder pattern. For the 15th, it's a lot of the same. Very, very quiet, though. I think very little to no precipitation is occurring here. Maybe some lake effect snow showers if anything. The biggest bit of activity is coming in the Gulf of Mexico, where we do have a low here trying to form. And we're going to see a lot of these, so keep that in mind. So let's watch what happens with this. By Thursday, that one becomes very suppressed, and really, we don't have a super strong jet stream moving through, so it'd be really hard for it to catch on to anything here with no strong jet stream. We're actually warming towards the east here by the 16th. This is the overall look. Again, very little to no precipitation. As we move towards Friday the 17th, what we see happening is warmth building into the kind of Great Lakes area, into the mid-Atlantic, up the East Coast in general. And we do see cold trying to dive down for the west here by this 17th time frame, even some northern Rockies snowfall. We actually do have a snowstorm up here for Canada just to the north of the Great Lakes as well. As we take this towards Saturday, we start to see the activity return. We deal with another trough in the west, ridge in the east. Little bit of a pattern here for the 18th. Again, that 6 to 10 day outlook, the first one we looked at from the National Weather Service, is being influenced by this pattern. We do see some Rocky Mountain snowfall and pretty considerable amounts of Rocky Mountain snowfall. And then we see some thunderstorm activity, showers here across kind of your Gulf states here into a little bit of the Ohio Valley. So keep that in mind. We could have some severe weather in this warm and humid quick pattern that we see. And that appears to be a bit of a cold front. We even get some snowfall showers as it moves towards the East Coast for bits of the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. We are seeing some thunderstorm activity here across the Southeast here in general. Snowfall for the Southern Rockies now, as this area has gone ahead and dived towards the south. We see that by the time we're reaching Monday, we start to see some interesting activity. There's plenty of cold to go around, even though the heart of it is over the west here. We're seeing plenty of it over the Midwest, even down into the South Central states for the Mid-Atlantic and East Coast, especially the Northeast here. While we're still dealing with some residual warmth and showers here for the Southeast, we start to get a low trying to form over the Gulf. Some snowfall over some areas that have just seen some. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas. Take this with a grain of salt because it is far out this time around, but would be interesting. And this low is going to want to latch onto the jet stream because we see a very strong one across this area. So it's getting latched onto that and should move somewhat towards the east here. So yeah, we see that move up into the kind of mid-Atlantic Northeast here. We see this low, which originally formed over the area that we've seen a lot of them forming here, just offshore of Texas. Moves offshore of the mid-Atlantic, a little bit of an ice storm here for Virginia and North Carolina, and then some snowfall finally for some areas that need it. Not necessarily down here, they've just seen a storm, but New York City up through southern New England into Boston, that area there that's been in a little bit of a snow hole gets some in this scenario. But again, could change, so take it with a grain of salt, but a good sign here moving forward. That one moves out. We get kind of a secondary low that forms and brings a little bit more before it's said and done. And we're left with the colder pattern here after the 20th, of course, as we've been saying. But the 24th, 25th, 26th, we get an even stronger look of cold. Really, really intense here along the eastern states. We are seeing a deep diving Arctic blast in this scenario of low well offshore here. And a little bit of snow showers for the Carolinas, perhaps, as that very cold air moves in. This is for Saturday the 25th. Again, you're really going to want to take that with a grain of salt. But the bigger picture thing here that I think is easier to predict is the deeper cold air moving in as we move towards later January. So after the 20th in particular, I mean, we have cold throughout, but we have a little bit of a warmer pattern again nearby that 15th time frame, 15th through 18th, I'd say. A little bit of a winter thaw, so keep that in mind as well. Limited activity at times, but then it seems like a light switch just gets switched on, and then all of a sudden it's just a ton of activity. So up and down as far as activity is concerned. We are going to see a little bit of a different look here from the GFS model. So we see the cold. Again, very little to no activity over the coming days besides this kind of Midwest and Great Lakes minor snowfall event. A little bit of a clipper. Some snowfall showers do make their way into the Northeast as well. And then we get a little bit warmer here, as you can see, again, 17th, 18th, 19th, and we do get this similar thunderstorm, perhaps even severe weather event here across the deeper south. Some snowfall up here to the north as we have a strong low near the Hudson Bay. And this is what eventually kind of brings in our colder air. We do get the snowfall with this. It's just a bit further south. North Carolina, Virginia. I honestly don't even want one at this point because it's such a nail biter for me when it's just a close call and I think I'd be a lot less stressful if I wasn't even seeing a chance of snowfall, to be honest with you guys. As we take a look, that cold continues to get worse here towards the 20th, and we do get a low trying to form here again, so another snowfall event perhaps for the southern mid-Atlantic / northern southeast coast. Again, I would be on the edge of my seat like crazy during this. We see that one move on, and then a third system for the Carolinas and Virginia. Again, I think the GFS model is a little too far southeast with a lot of this. Maybe one out of the three looks this way, but 3 snowstorms for that area, and my area would be unheard of. So, especially considering we just had one. So, definitely take that with a grain of salt. I think some of these are either going to be moving further offshore or perhaps towards the north, impacting more areas in the mid-Atlantic and northeast. As much as I wish I could get 3 major snowstorms back to back to back, it's not going to happen that way, is my current analysis of that, if you're curious. But we do get the deeper cold for a moment there. A little less bullish on it than the European model, and kind of fittingly here at the end of the model run, right at hours 348 or 384, we end up with a very zonal pattern, just very flat jet stream across the entire United States. So it kind of just reverts back to a very standard look, not very common actually, but some would call this average. But it's not average for the West Coast all the way to the East Coast to be average. Usually your average is just a mean average between your cold days and your warm days. It's very hard to hit an average day, and pretty unique, but probably not going to happen again as we're at like day 16 here. As we take a look at the total precipitation, quite a bit of activity across the Gulf and Southeast as you could expect, but very little compared to normal for most everywhere else. As we take a look, maybe the Rockies here, a little bit of a highlight, and plains just to the east of the Rockies in particular. But the Southeast is kind of a bright spot here on the precipitation. Very, very dry out west, unfortunately, with those fires going on. And then from the south central states all the way up to the Northeast, quite dry as well. As we just take a look at the total snowfall here on the European model, we do get a ton despite the precipitation. I guess the very dry areas here really struggling, but the Rockies, as I mentioned, do really, really start to cash in, especially the eastern Rockies, I would say. So think eastern Montana, Wyoming, central Colorado down through New Mexico. Those areas really getting feet of snowfall. The lakes are not done yet either, 1 to 2 feet of snowfall. And then we do get some snowfall throughout these areas, but it isn't anything crazy. I think the thing I'm happiest about here is these areas with the snow hole perhaps filling in if this is correct. When we zoom into the east, we could really see it on screen here. Maybe 10 inches plus for Boston in this scenario, maybe 6 to 10 for New York City. So some good snowfall for areas that have really been struggling to get it this winter despite the cold temperatures. And we do see some deeper south, lighter snowfall happening in some areas here, which is interesting. GFS model is going to look a whole lot different. They say snow hole continues. They don't care about your feelings. We see just a very huge lack of snowfall where there's already been a very huge lack of snowfall. Also, the Rockies a little bit less here, and a little bit more for the Cascades and Sierra Nevada out west. The lakes are almost the same here as the European model. I want to zoom into the east here because, again, this is across 3 different snowstorms, very deep to the southeast. I'm highly doubtful. I'm even a little skeptical that even one of these will happen, let alone 3. So keep that in mind if you're wondering how realistic this is. I think that we're going to see some of this move towards the north, like I said. Typically, a north trend tends to happen over time, so we'll be watching for that perhaps. I would love to see some of you guys that have been really wanting it up here end up getting some. Again, in this area, they have seen it, but for mostly Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York City, southern New England, I really want to see you guys cash in here. So hopefully this does trend to the north. As we take a look here at the temperature pattern, this is according to your European model. We do see colder temperatures overall for a lot of the eastern states. Warmth kind of spreads in here again, 17th, 18th, 19th, but then we get this hugely deep cold moving in on the European model. It's like a one blast of it, and it's already super cold, and then we get this very, very intense, almost polar vortex type event here, and it's all coming due to a continued positive PNA here. We've seen a lot of this again for December into early January now, and this model is saying it's going to continue into late January, pushing this Arctic air to the east. This is the type of cold where we don't even see snow usually because the jet stream is way out here, so the storms track way too far to the east. If you're a snow lover, you're going to be hoping this kind of backs off a little bit on this cold, because this is too intense for that. For the most part, you would need interior snowstorms moving through the cold, but those don't tend to bring quite as much. The GFS model here, when we take a look at it, is going to be a lot less intense with that cold. As we move through, warmer pattern, we do get a pretty brutal cold air mass, but obviously a little bit of a far cry from what we saw in the European model. We get a lot more of like 15 to 20 degrees below normal. We've seen some of that so far this winter. It's much more of a very cold pattern that is semi-typical, as opposed to what the European model is showing, which is like a once in every 5-10 year cooldown. When we're talking, 30 to 40 to even 50 degrees below normal. Yeah, there's nothing even close to normal about that at all. We do end up with some colder times. Again, we get that warm up 17th, 18th, 19th, but right about the 20th onward, we do get some pretty brutal cold air. When we look at the long range guidance, this is the 10th through the 17th here on the European ensemble model, so we do get colder temperatures along the east. 17th through the 24th, also quite cold. 24th through the 31st, and I want to warn you, this is a little bit averaged out looking, in my opinion. This is an ensemble model, which means there's multiple members at play, and when they start to disagree a lot, you start to see wacky things like cold from coast to coast across the entire United States, things like that. That's when you start to see less accurate outputs by these models, and it does start to lean cold for the west and warm in the east for February. We'll watch and see if that's the trend moving forward. Wouldn't be surprised if after a very cold December, very cold January, we do see a warm month in there sometimes. It's very rare to see 3 full winter months below normal. Typically, there's 1 out of the 3 that is warm, so we'll see what happens for February. GFS ensemble model for the extended outlook. This is the 10th through 17th, 17th through 24th, and then 24th through 31st. A little bit more concise and decisive with this. We do see warmth across the southwest, with cold continuing into the east. So again, a little bit more of a promising look here from this model as opposed to the European model. But we also spread into warmth for parts of February here with cold in the west, but we do see the cold kind of return on this one. I think February is looking a lot less cold than January did. At this point, looking towards January from December, we were very optimistic that it was going to be very cold, which it obviously ended up being. But I'm not seeing those same signals for February as of now. I'll just let you guys know. Finally, our CFS daily model, which is another long-range model. This is the 12th through the 19th. 19th through the 26th, so again, getting colder. 26th through 2nd, quite cold. And then the 2nd through the 9th, still cold. 9th through the 16th, so you get the point. It's cold the whole model run. So this model is not as much of an ensemble model. This one has less members, so it's a lot more all over the place. And sometimes the ensemble, the large grouping of ensembles, is very helpful in these long-range outlooks, and that's the main problem with the CFS model. But at least we have 1 out of 3 calling for cold in the east during February. But I will tell you, I definitely put a lot more stock in that European long-range model than the GFS one as opposed to the CFS one, so keep that in mind. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I think we have a lot to track moving forward. Obviously, we have some snowstorms cashing in on the models as of now along the East Coast. We'll have to track these and see if they move offshore or further north, perhaps, as I mentioned earlier. Maybe looking at a more active upcoming pattern than what these models are alluding to right now, but certainly looks very cold, especially between the 20th and 25th. So we'll be watching that very, very closely with you guys. Be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.